Yeah, framing's nice, all good.
Lovely, look at that, it's like you've done it
Here
before.
we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
So welcome, Susie.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining me. Yeah, so we're here at the Harlow Playhouse.
Yeah.
I think we're going to talk about your upcoming show, Priscilla, Queen of the Disaster.
Yeah.
But before we get into all of that, I've got a little tiny tradition that we start these off with.
Let's go.
It's very simple.
Okay.
So we do a 3, 2, 1 and clap.
Okay.
Together.
Okay, I'm ready.
You ready to join me?
I used to dance. I feel like I come in.
3, 2, 1. There we go.
Proud of us.
And we're in.
You're in.
So we did it. We did the clap.
We did.
It wasn't too complicated, was it?
No, I felt really good about it, if I'm honest with you.
So before we started recording, we started chatting, and I was like, let's stop.
Yeah.
Silence. Let's not get rid of all the good stuff before we actually press record. So let's start with your show is about to come up. So this is going to go out after your show.
Yes.
So this show isn't the first time. It's not the first time that you put this show on. I understand it's got a bit of a history.
It does, yeah.
So take me to the beginning of where this show started for you.
Okay, so I started writing a blog, like every other mother out there. It was what was part of the maternity pack when you come out of the hospital to write a blog about it. As though you're the first woman in the world to have a child. I'm only joking, I'm just... so I started...
But there is something about, like, it is a unique thing to go through, but yet we all go through it. It's really strange, isn't it? Like, it's unique to you, I guess. Sure,
and also, like, it's so important to have conversation around motherhood, generally, and I welcome all of it. And when somebody becomes a new mum now, and I'm, like, 12 years in, I'm all ears to it, because the reality of it doesn't often match the version of it that we're sort of fed. And so the more people say about it and the more they talk about their experience, the less alone everybody's going to feel in it and the less isolated. And all of those scary statistics of people, you know, feeling on their own and postnatal depression and postnatal psychosis and all of this stuff, and even just feeling stressed, even the baby blues, whatever the spectrum of that is, the more conversation around it, the better. And I think that's getting better over the time, and as more people, I don't know, just say they found it hard or this bit's amazing or whatever. And I think it's really important because I still read people's blogs when when they have a baby, or I want to know about their experience, because it is this universal experience, but there are no two births that are the same. There's no story that's the same. There's no story to motherhood. None of it is exactly the same. So I think it's really important. But I started writing mine because at the time I'd just become a single parent. And I remember walking back into here actually to work, and people were sort of asking me questions, but like gingerly, like, oh, so what name do you go by now? And I was like, oh God, like, I'm like an open book, so, you know, ask me what you want. So I'm like, oh no, it's fine, and wanted to talk about it a bit more, probably to put more people at ease, like, it's fine, you can just talk to me about this. But equally was like, oh, maybe I should write about it. And then, for no other reason than that, like, if anyone had any questions, that would just be there. And actually, I was trying to say to people, which is quite funny now, I'm okay, by the way, you don't have to worry about me, I'm fine now, which is ridiculous, because it was like a year down the line of becoming a single parent. I wasn't fine, but I was a version of fine, and I probably wanted to present that way. So I did that, and that coincided with me seeing a one-woman show here called Spine. Kirsty, who works here as well, she was in it, and I think one of the managers here had seen it in Edinburgh and come back and said, Kirsty's going to be perfect for this. And that's all going on and happening at the same time. And I saw it, and I had never seen anything like that before. I'd never been as moved, as affected. I couldn't really speak after it. I didn't realise something like that could have an impact. I didn't realise that you could create a show that wasn't just this sort of drama. Do you know what I mean? Like this drama where someone's playing a character and we're all pretend, that kind of thing. I didn't realise that was possible. So that sort of all happened around the same time. And then one of the programmers here said to me, I think you should put that into a show, what you're writing about. And I was like, I don't know that I can. because I've never done anything like that before.
And it's hard to, like, it's one thing like writing an open, it's like an open journal, isn't it, when you're writing a blog? So you're telling people openly, this is what the experience I'm going through. But then to put that, to dramatise it and to showcase what's going on in your life in a drama and kind of make it, it's such a big thing, isn't it? It's such a, you know, it takes a lot of vulnerability. To do that, I guess. Yeah,
and I think if I'd known the ins and outs of that, maybe I probably wouldn't have, which is great. You shouldn't always know what's coming because otherwise you'll never do anything. And also I didn't know what I wanted it to be like. I knew I didn't want to get onto a stage and be like, this is a show, like as in, and you're so far removed from it, because it isn't that type of show. It's kind of, it's like more of a storytelling show. So I knew that, but I also know that I hadn't really seen loads like that either. So that's different. But I think it does take a certain naivety to just be like, okay, let's just write one story at a time. And obviously I procrastinated on that for like 6 months.
Of course, that's something I've noticed us creatives do. I thought it was just myself that procrastinated.
No, it's
but
part of the process.
But the more I'm meeting creative people, it's something that we do. We kind of, I think we're trying to maybe protect ourselves.
Sure, yeah.
Because we've got this idea or we've got this thing that we can kind of see, but we don't necessarily know all the steps to get there. So in the procrastination, you start to feel a little bit safe, maybe.
Yeah, and I also think it's, like you said, really vulnerable thing to do. It also feels like homework.
Yes,
like you've got home from your ordinary life, where you've gone to work and had the kids and all that stuff, and now I've got to do homework. But also, I was listening to a podcast this week, actually, with the guy who wrote Scrubs and Ted Lasso, same guy, which I thought I didn't know.
Right.
And he said that anybody that says they love writing is probably a sociopath. Most people just love having written something.
Yes,
that the actual process is not a great one.
No, it's very solitary. You can only do it on your own. You can bounce ideas with other people. But then you have to take that away and do something
with it. And if it's like, you know, one woman show, there's no one waiting for me. There's no one going, oh, we'll meet here and we'll do this at this point. It is just all on me, and I'm very easy on myself. I'm like, no, you deserve a break, babe. You had a hard day. So, yeah, I procrastinated for about 6 months, and then in the last 3 months, because the programmer did just program it in and just said, right, there's your deadline, just go for it. And I also knew that I could say, I don't want to do that.
I think that's a great way to overcome the procrastination, is to have a deadline, to have a thing. And that's one of the reasons I love theatre, is because it forces me to make it happen. I book in a time where I'm doing a show, and then I can procrastinate, but it's getting closer and closer and closer, and it has to happen, and you might have sold some tickets.
Sure. And now there's people coming in.
There's people coming in who told people about this, because you don't keep it secret, because you can't.
And you're excited as well. It's all of it at once, I think, is really important to note. Is like, you are excited about it, you do want to do it, but also that period of procrastination, I think, is really important as well, because obviously it's great to have those practical days where you sit down and you write it, but so much of it isn't actually the writing of it. So much of it is the ruminating, is the discussing it, is the talking about it, is like, I now, trying to write a second one, realise, oh, this is what you did last time, where you'd like have this story, and then you'd tell some people this one little story. So did that land? What bit did they like about that? But you don't really realise that's what you're doing. And then you're like, oh, it did, so I'm going to take that back, kind of thing. And so, like, I'm trying to give myself less of a hard time about it, because it is part of it.
It's part of the, you're so right. And this is taking me back to when I was at school, actually, and I didn't kind of realise at school I was a creative. I didn't understand what I was when I was at school. But I spent a lot of time looking out the window and imagining things and telling myself stories. That was most of my childhood, actually. And within that space, my imagination, the clogs were turning that perhaps wouldn't come to something until like 10 years later.
Sure, absolutely, And there's so much work that goes behind that you can't, it isn't tangible, and it isn't like, you can't pull evidence to say I was doing that kind of thing. But a lot of it is in the rumination, I think, anyway. And tons of those ideas don't land, don't work, don't don't ever make it to the thing, but they're part of the
pathway to discovering what the thing is.
Yeah.
And it's so true as well when you said about being kind to yourself.
Yeah.
So when I do writing, I decide, right, there's a period of time where I'm going to be alone, and I'm going to like separate distractions, because distractions are terrible, like your phone and things like that.
Great.
So I separate the phone, and then I take myself away to my shed and just go,
good.
This is a period of time where it's just me and the notepad and pen.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, I don't actually have to do anything today.
Yeah.
But nothing else is going to happen.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah. So
absolutely,
if I write one line, brilliant.
If
I do nothing,
that's okay
well, that's
too.
okay as well.
Because I also don't think you can force that bit either.
No.
There's times when I like go, that's the time that I'm going to write, and I'm just not in the
zone to do that.
Yeah, I'm just not in. I haven't got the right mindset for it.
Did you find it easier when you were doing the blog than doing the play? Did the blog come a little bit more? Did it flow out a little bit easier?
Yeah, because it is like a bit of a diary, and it was just kind of like, okay, that's what I feel strongly about this week. But like then when you're starting to write something, there has to be this thread, and sometimes you want to tell stories in something. I feel like it's much easier to just be able to write a blog and tell a story. And a part of that's a bit of ego as well. Like your ego saying, I think that's a good story to tell. And then you'll write that story for, say, a show. And then it's like, this isn't serving this whole piece. And although I think that's great, and I want to tell that, and I think that's going to get a good laugh, if it doesn't serve it, then I have to like put my ego aside and be like, that's not for this kind of thing. Whereas that standalone blog, you can just be quite indulgent about what you want to tell kind of thing.
I wonder if it's the element of bringing the audience into it.
Yeah.
That you know with a play there's going to be an audience, whereas with a blog you can just put it out there. If people decide to read it or not read it, it doesn't really matter. So there's not necessarily any rules, but there is with the production, with the play itself.
Yeah, and also knowing that, I mean, there were times when my director, Nathan, he would be like, I don't think this story serves this thing, and I'd be quite adamant that I thought it did. No, it definitely does. And by the way, that went either way. Some didn't make it, and some I was like, no, that absolutely has to be in. But funnily enough, like I'd be so, I think this should happen, and then we'd do a run, and I'd be like, no, it does stick out, doesn't it? It doesn't serve that whatsoever. And you kind of have to be like, if this isn't, put you aside and then be like, this is a thing in itself, and that has to come first, which I think is really helpful to know what's going to go in and what's going to come out.
I wonder if with writers and directors, whether they should work together.
Yeah.
Whether, like, I've been the writer and director of my own piece. I've also directed friends' things.
Yeah.
And I wonder if sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't, because you both have, as a writer, you have a very clear vision of what this thing should be. And as a director, you should have a clear vision. And do they necessarily come together?
Yeah, I think it all depends. It was interesting when I wanted to find a director, and it was quite last minute, so I'm told, because I hadn't done this before. So I was just like, oh, really? I'm late?
So what was last minute then? What did that look like?
It was probably about 3 months before the first performance. Okay. And it was not in a state that it needed to be, and has changed since that first performance anyway. So I probably needed them a little bit sooner, or needed him. What I thought was quite interesting was I thought I needed somebody who was quite maternal and could bring that to it. And it wasn't and when I was talking to Nathan, because he'd started working here at the Playhouse, it wasn't that we were thinking about that. He was giving me advice about what I should look for. And then I realised that I bring enough of that. I'm already filling that quota of like that maternal side of it, and that actually he had this sort of perspective that was completely different and that was completely objective. And he could just be like, I don't know what that means. What do you mean by that? I've got this language around this subject area. And he could pull that apart, and he could be quite, I don't know, get this balance of being able to like push me where I needed to be pushed, but like hold me when it was just a little bit too much kind of thing. So So I think that it depends on the director. I think
because you decided to be in this as well, didn't you?
Yeah.
So you didn't just write it. You also then at some point said, "I am going to be me."
Yeah, and I didn't.
So where
think
did
that
that come from?
Well, I didn't think it at first. I was like, "Oh, I'll just write it," and initially thought maybe Kirsty could do it because I'd seen her in this thing, and I thought maybe she could do it. And then as I was writing it, and as I was talking to people, and the people around here, and programmers here, and stuff like that, it just became a bit obvious that no one else can tell your story. And I think when you write something and you're writing characters, that's one thing. But if anything that I would say to anybody that was writing about their actual story is to be so boundaried and protective about who tells your story and how they tell your story, which I think helps with the whole director-writer thing. It's like you become really territorial over, actually, this is my story and this is important, or you know better about that. But also, you, at least the first time it goes out, you need to be the person that tells that story, I think. Because, you know, that's like an authenticity thing with an audience as well.
Yeah, and so you're adding vulnerability of the writing onto vulnerability of performing yourself, telling your story.
Yeah.
And it's like all these levels of, it's quite scary, I can imagine.
Oh, it was, yeah. When I think back now and I think about the delusion it probably had, because you have to have a level of delusion, I think anyway. The delusion of thinking like, I don't know if I can perform for an hour on my own. I don't know that I can do that. And I also don't know if I could write something, and I'm only really going to know once I do it, if it lands, if it works or if it doesn't, kind of thing. But then as it got closer and the thing was written and it was, you know, we're working on it, I was just sort of like, well, we're in now. You've just got to kind of do it. But I also didn't know, I had no plans past that first one, no plans whatsoever. I was just like, that's just the focus. And the focus isn't really, oh, I suppose it depends on what you define as success, but the focus isn't anything but, can I? And not should I, or any of that, can I do this? And how will I feel afterwards? I don't even know if it was how I feel afterwards, just can I just get to it and do it kind of thing.
What a great benchmark to have. What a great, I think success is an individual thing.
Yeah.
I don't think we should take it to like an outside perspective. It should be just what we define as success.
Absolutely.
And that sounds like a really wonderful place to start.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I do this?
Yeah. It was, and it was a real challenge, and a real focus for me at a time when I probably needed something for myself as well, because once you've had kids, and they're still little as well, and so much of your life is around them, and as it should be, that it's a real important part of that stage in your life to still retain something for yourself. And for me, and I know that will look different for everybody else, and I can honestly say I probably couldn't articulate that at the time, but I can look back and say, I think you require challenge and purpose, and that was a really good way for me to do it, to have this challenge and this purpose that was just for me and that was aside from them. Although it involved them in the content of it, it wasn't necessarily, you know, reliant on that role of being a mother kind of thing. So I think that's important too. I'm
wondering, did you add this element of doing the show into your blog? Did you continue with the blog? No,
I didn't in the end. Well, I didn't in the end because it felt like enough, as in like I've got enough here to do kind of thing, and that just sort of fell by the wayside kind of thing. And also, you know, like single parent, it was hard I would do a day of like work or be with them, depending on what my schedule looked like. And that was quite full on, because when I wrote it when they were like 2 and maybe 3 and like 1. So that's like full on time.
Feel like it's a full-time job being a parent.
Full-time job, yeah. And I was on my own as well, so I'd do that whole day, get them to bed, and then be like, right, okay, write something, kind of thing. So yeah, there wasn't the space for the blog, I suppose. Yeah. At that point.
But it's such an important message that you're telling me now, to find, as a mother, to find space for yourself, to find something for you, for a challenge for you, to give yourself purpose. Because I have seen it a lot. I've seen a lot of parents lose themselves in being a parent. It's very common, isn't it?
Well, it's definitely part of it, because it's such an identity shift. And the thing is, everyone's version of purpose is going to look different. And of course, they're such a huge part of my purpose. And if everything fell away, as long as that stayed, I know I'd be okay. And somebody could listen to this and think that's not the right, because everybody's version of that is different.
Of course.
So the element of like knowing that they are such a huge part of my life and such a huge part of my identity, and I'm not ashamed to say that in the slightest. I know there's like a bit of a narrative about, you know, you're not defined by motherhood, but I think you can be defined by whatever you want and whatever's important to you, and nobody gets to tell you what you are and what you're not. So they're a huge part of that, but I would be, and I think some people are like, that's it, and they're happy with that. And I celebrate those choices. I think everybody should make their own choice. But I can also acknowledge that there is a part of me that needs something for me as well. And that I feel like when you become a mother and when things happen to you like that, that's such a huge shift. It's like a breaking down of your old self and this kind of like rebirth of another person. And you get to choose what that looks like. And for me, I feel really strongly that the best version of a mother that I can be to them is one who is a happy, contented mother. And I think there's a study out. They used to think that the main determining factor for like happy children was like a present nuclear family unit, that, you know, 2.4 children kind of thing. But it's not now. The main determining factor, as they've done further studies, is a happy primary carer. And if they're happy, then those children are going to thrive. And I know I'll have that same guilt that every other mother has, that, you know, you walk away from them and you go to do something else and you think, oh God, I should be there. And then when you were there and you think I should be there, I have that. I'm not immune to like that feeling or that messaging. But I come back to the best thing I can do for them is to build an identity that's full and serves me too. And also that's the example of what I want to give those. I've got 2 little boys. That's an example of a woman I want to give them, that, you know, she shows up for herself as well. So I think it's really important that I do stuff for myself like this, because I'm just better all round kind of thing. And I know, like, we're talking about identity. It is especially for mothers, I can't really talk for dads, and I have been asked to, but I can't really talk for them. But I know for mothers, like, your body changes, your mind changes, everything is different now. You'll never go back. No matter what happens to your life, you'll never go back to what you were before. And there's a grief in that as well, but also a celebration and a joy in that as well. And so you get to choose what you build it up like, and not losing yourself, or not even that, not losing yourself, understanding that she is gone and you get to build her, this new version, who's a mother and this and that and the other. I think it's really important.
I had a friend say to me, so with my children, and in my life, my wife got very ill for quite a period of time. And so I had to stop work and become full-time parent.
Wow.
And I had to sort of go, right, everything that I wanted in life now needs to stop, because I need to look after my wife and I need to make sure my kids are okay, give them everything.
Yeah.
But I went so hard into giving them everything that I stopped myself. Like I stopped the things that give me joy. I stopped having even just basic things like I love the cinema. And I would not spend time going to the cinema anymore because I would just sacrifice everything for them. And someone stopped me and said, you've got to actually put yourself first in order to give them the best possible version of you.
100%.
So you've got to, you have to live. You have to have a life, and they need to see that. You can't just be in pure service to your children.
And that is such a message for parents, is this sacrifice thing. Sacrifice is coming anyway. Like, it's already coming anyway. That's inevitable. And it's such a message that you should do that. And actually, and particularly for like women, like the idea of a good woman is someone who sacrifices and who gives and who is of service. But then I think about it, I think it's so interesting that what version of a human do you want to give your kids? And I know that language is super important, and I talk to them about all sorts of stuff, and we're probably too open in my household, if we're honest. And I know that's a version of therapy they're going to have to go through. I'm probably overcorrected somewhat, and I'm ready for that. You know, I'm open to it. But I also know that none of it matters unless you are modelling for those kids what you want them to know, and what you model is what they know. And I want them to choose themselves. I want them unapologetically as well, and not deemed as like selfish, choose themselves. I want them to be kind. Whatever they would show to anybody else, they need to show to themselves. Because I really do believe that your like capacity to feel compassion and kindness and all of that good stuff for other people is in direct correlation for how much you can do that for yourself. And any other, as kind as you think you are and compassionate you are, it's performative unless it's authentic, and that is in direct correlation to how you feel about yourself. And I want them to be those kids, and I want them to be those kids that say, it's really important that I do this thing for myself, and to have purpose, and to show up for people, and to be a well-rounded human, not somebody that's just sacrificed themselves.
Just a parent.
Yeah.
And from my experience, when I was just a parent, I wasn't being the best parent.
No.
My kids weren't getting the best version of me because
they won't.
I didn't have actually anything other than ferrying them around, being the taxi driver or making sure they're fed, all them basic things that you should do anyway.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything else to me.
Yeah.
And I was more stressed.
Sure, yeah.
So when things were difficult, I couldn't cope as well.
100%.
Because I didn't have them moments for me to take myself away and do that separate thing, have that separate moment in life.
Yeah, you need it. You absolutely need it. And it's all about like, when I think about it, I think my work as a parent is to keep my nervous system as regulated as possible. That's my work. Because if I do that, everything we can handle. And I'm not going to be able to do it all the time. I'm not expecting perfection at all, but that is my work. And the first sign, the trigger of me not having a regulated nervous system is irritation. And of course, those kids irritate the fuck out of me and I irritate the fuck out of them. And that's life. So when I feel it, I'm like, okay, this is going to derail somewhere. But
and that's not going to get any... So my son is coming up to 19.
Wow.
And so that last night, he was really
getting
to me to the point where I was shaking. And you can say about the nervous system. And I was like, right, I need to take myself away from this.
Yeah.
I need to go and just sit in a different room and just work on myself for a minute
100%.
because this isn't going to move forward in a way that I want.
Yeah.
You know,
or a way that I'm going to be happy with the outcome. I'm not going to be happy with this result. But I also know that in order for me to regulate my nervous system, of course, it's that somatic stuff. It's the breathing, it's the taking time for yourself, it's being outside. But a huge part of that is, what have I done creatively today? Yes. Because that.
So how do you feel that? Because not everyone sees themselves as a creative. A lot of people are like, no, I've never done that. It's not for me. So what advice would you give to other mothers to say, go and seek something out creative, whether it's starting a blog or writing a play? What would you say to them, this is how you should start?
I'd say that I think everybody has like this inner niggle or knowing as to something that they enjoy doing. Like, not because they think they're incredible at it, because no one starts there. And if anybody says they do, they're lying. Not because you think you're incredible at it, not because you think you're talented at it, none of that stuff. As soon as you get wrapped up in that stuff, you lose the focus. I'd say whatever brings you joy, whether it is consuming it, poetry or art or whatever it is, just start with no intention of like showing anybody. Just start something, little, like the tiniest thing, and then show up the next week or wherever your time frame is. Then show up the next week, and then when you miss one, which you inevitably will, show yourself compassion and show up again. That's all I'd say. Because if I said to you, and then what will happen is this, and I'll give you the big old list of things you have to do in order to get to that point. If I knew, I wouldn't have done it. I know I wouldn't have done it because I would have just felt too overwhelmed. I would have felt like an imposter. There's no way I could do that. There's no way I could achieve that. And I just wouldn't have done it. And so I think just look at the next session for the thing you love.
That's what I call episode 1 of this podcast.
Oh, did you?
Just start.
Just start. Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because it was I have no idea what I'm doing.
No one does.
I had no idea where this was going.
Yeah.
So me and my friend, we just sat down and we started.
Had a little chat.
Had a little chat, and then the consistency of the turning up again and just going one more step. And it is almost like taking baby steps rather than looking at the whole thing and going, I'm going to put on a theatre show that's going to go here, there, and everywhere, and the dream dream can look too big, can't it? Sometimes.
Absolutely, and I think it is never ever what you think it's going to be. It's just not going to be that, and that can be wonderful and devastating all at the same time. But you'll always be surprised by it. You'll always be surprised by what this what this looks like. And the thing is, you could start and be like, this is not for me. I've started a million things that are not for me, and I will continue to do that because that's where like the good stuff is, you know. And you'll throw so many ideas out there and have so much stuff that you want to do, and there'll be one thing that sticks a little bit, and then you run with that for a little bit, and then that might not serve you anymore, and then you say goodbye to that and you move on to the next thing. But I took a really long time to even consider myself. I don't even consider myself like an actor. One of the first lines in the show is, by the way, guys, I'm not an actor. Because, well, one, it takes away that kind of wall for audience members as well, but it's just true. I'm not coming up here to do like a thing, like a performance. This is a story. And knowing that, like, you can't always know where things are going to go. So, like, you know, you 10 years ago, I don't know how long podcasts have been out, but it feels like a decade ago they weren't here. You can't have foreseen this.
No way.
You can't have planned this when you sat there.
No, this was 100% not me.
Yeah, sure.
This was, 18 months ago, I would tell myself I couldn't talk as myself.
Yeah.
So I wanted to be an actor for a very long time and a director. And I'd done little bits here and there, but the career had never got very far. But I would always say if there was an opportunity to do an interview, that's not happening.
Oh, really?
Because I don't know how to vocalise my thoughts.
Well, that's the scariest part,
you know,
isn't it?
And the judgment, the fear of judgment.
Oh yeah.
That could you imagine if I said something wrong, like could you like, and that would and the people around me might have something to say about what I've got to say, but everything I was scared about, the exact opposite has happened since I've become myself.
Well, it's that thing, isn't it? Whatever you're triggered by, that's your work. So like whatever the thing is you're most frightened of, that's your work. Whatever it's easy. Like some people have said to me, I don't know how you share that stuff, because I share quite gruesome stuff, I suppose, in some people's books. I'm like, well, that's not my area of fear. Like that isn't my area of fear. I don't care about that. And I'm not worried about being judged in that area. That's not to say I'm not worried about being judged in life. Of course I am. But that isn't my area of fear. And so when I would write things that would be I'm not sure if I should say this or not, when I was like, well, that's what you should be saying. The scary thing, there's tons of things out there that people are saying, that loads of people have said, and they feel a bit more comfortable because those people have said those things. But I think it's really important to go towards your triggers and be like, that's where the work is. 100%.
Tell me more about why that's worked out for you.
I think because the things that I was scared to say about motherhood, about my life, that I say in this show, are the things that have probably created the show in the first place. Well, created the tour, because I just did the show and was like, right, okay, I've done it, brilliant. And then the thing that motivated me to carry on or do it again, bring it on tour, those sorts of things, was like the feedback afterwards. And that's not to say that that's always, you know, I'm sure there are many people that have gone away and been like, that's not for me, and that's fine. But when I remember the very first show that I did, and a girl that I know, I wasn't like really good friends with, but I know she came to see it, and she said, I thought I was the only person shouting at my kids. And I was like, I thought this was like universal. We're all shouting at our kids, guys. We're all ashamed of it, sure, yeah, and it's not right, absolutely, but we are all shouting, right? And I think that was just like this moment, this light bulb moment where I thought, we have to keep talking about this. We have to keep saying about this. We have to keep sharing our shit, which is the line from the show, like share the shit. Because that's, like, we live in a generation where people share all of their success stories online, and I've done that too. Of course we should, and it's part of the joy of life, and I love to see people succeed, and that is obviously part of the picture, but it's not the whole picture. The picture is also your failures and where you didn't get it right and the missteps, and that's what this show is about, is all of the missteps and stuff like that. And what I know is I've shared all of that success stuff, and that's been lovely, and I've shared the shit bits and the failures and how I've connected to other people. And the most deep layer is when I've admitted and I've been vulnerable and I've been unashamed to say, yeah, I really fucked up here, this was really wrong, or this really went wrong for me. That connection I've never been able to get through my success. Never, ever, ever. And then having these women, and sometimes men, talk to me afterwards and be like, oh my God, yeah, I felt like that when I had a C-section, and I haven't spoken about it, and because, you know, you're kind of like, well, you've got a healthy baby now. Off you go after this major surgery. That for me is just like proof's in the pudding that like, oh, okay, you were really vulnerable there and you shared that, and that's the bit that people want to talk about, which has made me less fearful of it and actually so encouraging of it. So as soon as someone says something slightly, and I'm like, oh, like I've got no time for small talk, I'm like, we're in or we're out.
You're deep into this authenticity.
Yeah, you're in or you're out, and I haven't got time for this. And that, I don't know, there's probably something to be said about that, and it's probably flawed in many ways. But I just know that that is part of the purpose of it, is that you share all of it and come out and know that you weren't alone, and that you're not alone in those feelings. You're not a bad person, you're just a human trying to deal with all these scenarios as they come, and you're going to get them wrong and you're going to get them right, and there's a whole scale in between. So that's why I move towards those things, I think.
I think society is kind of teaching us that we have to protect these things, and we do have to show a shiny life.
Sure.
We have to put stuff on the gram, and we have to show that we're going on these wonderful shiny holidays, and and some of those do get a number of likes on social media, don't they? When we show we're doing all these, we get the dopamine hit. But in the real life, it's 100% that the more you lean into your authentic self and your truth, and you show all the grit and the dirt, the more you genuinely connect with people. Yeah. And it gives you better quality of life than that quick dopamine hit than you get on social media.
100%. I feel like, obviously, I've done it and I still do it. I'll share the bits that went right, but I'm also quite real about it. And you say about holidays, I shared a post about a holiday where I took the boys away. And I was like, I'm determined to make this a very real post about our holiday and be like, this was so wonderful and I'm so proud of us. But we did still argue. And they were really ungrateful at points, and they were also so grateful at other points. And we did eat too much. And they were also impatient with me, and they also wanted to be on the phones a bit more than I thought they would. And because it's all of those things. And because as well, like, you can get so deep. If you think you're the only person dealing with it, you're then internalizing this, that you've done the wrong thing. You've messed up these kids somehow. And, other kids are so grateful on their holiday, and other kids are this, and, that kind of thing. Then as soon as you start telling the story, everyone's like, oh, yeah, same. Mine didn't want to do this. Mine didn't want to do that. And there's just this really nice thing that happens after this show, that people just start sharing these stories. And it's just been the most rewarding part about the whole thing, is the people, once you share yours, they will share theirs.
Did you have any expectation of that as you was going into this show, that you would build connections in this way?
No, none at all. I didn't think that at all. That's definitely been the driving force of it, and has kept us going in like the harder parts of it, because it's not always been smooth. But it's definitely the driving force in it. You can't underestimate it. I think it is the purpose of all of it. Like, whatever you're doing, the purpose is your connection to other people. And I think that it will always surprise me when someone... What's really lovely is, like, I'll talk to some people after the show, but then also get messages and stuff, and we'll have these conversations, and someone might be going through what I went through, right now. Or they might have gone through it 20 years before I did, and there's just this perspective that we all get to give each other. And there's been points where I've been able to, like, connect other people and be like, I'm not in that area, but she is, and she's gone through that. And I just think if I had to determine an idea of success now versus what I did at the beginning, it would be that there's been people that have come away and maybe felt a little bit different about their day or their life or their situation or their kids or how they parent, just felt a little bit different. Then that, for me, is the success of it, I suppose.
That is a wonderful thing that we do with this giving and creating thing and making theatre, that we can make other people feel things hopefully in a positive way.
Sure, yeah.
And we can give stuff to other people. But how has it made you feel being the creator of this?
Well, of course, it's been lovely validation. I've loved that. I've got
There's nothing wrong in that.
No,
There's
no.
nothing wrong with, like,
no.
sometimes we shy away from that, don't
No,
we? That,
sure, and I'll be
you know,
honest.
like the validation of something. Maybe it makes us sound like we've got a big ego, or
Yeah.
but actually, no. That's a wonderful thing for us to be able to receive, isn't it?
And everyone else is looking for it. Not everyone's honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also so obvious that I'm doing that because I'm up there. And like, don't get me wrong, there's like, it's kind of a show of two halves. The first half is like comedy, and then there's a real moment where it changes, and you realise that I'm like a single parent kind of thing. And there are parts where I'm like doing that comedy and it's going really well, and I'm like loving it, and I'm just having the best time, and they're shouting out and I'm shouting out and all those things, and I'm like, oh, I've got to turn this ship now. I'm having a lovely old time, and now I'm gonna like turn the ship. So in that way, I'm like, yeah, of course, that's been lovely. And in terms of me, I feel like this has been my uni. This has been my drama school, is doing this, because when I started doing it, I would go out, I can happily say this now, and Nathan would say it to me too, I would walk out almost apologetically, like just like, hi, like Bambi, just like, right. And then I'd find my feet with it. And I remember him saying to me, the goal is you can go out there and they can come out of this show and they can feel anything. They can feel triggered, they can feel happy, they can feel different, they can feel all of those things, but one thing, they can't feel unsafe. You have to walk out there with confidence. You have to walk out there and they have to know that you have this and you can go any which way with it, but you have it and you will always, they feel safe. And I definitely didn't have that at the beginning. Mm-hmm. I definitely didn't have the confidence to know that if we did go off on a tangent, that I could bring it back and that I had the story, that, all of that stuff. Mm-hmm. And so looking at that now, I can honestly say that I have that now, that I'm like, oh, it doesn't really matter the outcome of what this is. They're either going to be with you or they're not. And it has gone either way, and you're not for everybody, and that's grand. Mm-hmm. But to know that, like, I genuinely do say to myself every time I go out, whatever happens out there, you're not worth any more or any less when you walk off this stage. So if it goes swimmingly and everybody loves it, you are still the same person, and that keeps your ego in check. Mm-hmm. And if you go out there and they just don't get you or it or whatever it is, you're still the same person, you're not worth any less. Mm-hmm. And I definitely didn't feel that way at the beginning. So when I think about that now and the type of like performer I am, that I just don't derive, I can get all the hits of dopamine and validation and enjoy it and love it, but know that I can do this and I am doing this, and that I'm exactly the same person either way it goes. So that's what I've taken from it, is to know that my value doesn't come from anybody else.
And I guess that realisation comes in the process of doing it.
Yeah.
It comes in time. It doesn't happen overnight.
No,
it doesn't.
God, no.
No one can just pick that confidence up at the start. It comes over, taking those, like I mentioned earlier, the baby steps.
Sure, yeah.
That we're just moving that little bit step further to it, and in a way, you can take that because you've already found your tribe of people who do get you at previous shows, that if you find another tribe of people that don't get you, it doesn't matter. Yeah. Because you already have people there that did get it.
Yeah, and it's like knowing that that's in the bank. Like,
and once you've banked that, nothing can take it away, can it?
Sure, and don't get me wrong, there was like, there's always a break over the summer, because I've been touring it for a couple of years, and there's always a break over the summer, and I had 2 shows just before the summer. And the very last one, I was like, I don't feel like you get me. And I could tell I do swear quite a bit in it at points. And that can go down so well sometimes and not. And I was like, oh, they don't like this. They really don't like this. And that's, again, it does depend on the area you're in and all of those
especially
factors.
If you're doing a tour that you're going around the country doing this.
Yeah,
and,
sure.
You do get different types of people.
You do, yeah.
In the south that you get in the north.
Yeah, 100%, yeah.
we do have a lot of different cultures within just this country alone, don't we?
Yeah, and that's like such a test to not adjust yourself in that moment. So like, there's a certain amount of adjustment where you have to be like, okay, I don't think they really like that, so I'm going to pull that back. But also to be steady enough in yourself to know that this is the piece and just keep going. Don't get quicker. Don't start explaining your jokes. I've done all this, by the way. Don't start explaining stuff. You need to just keep going with it. And then the show before that was just incredible. They had like an energy that was just incredible. And it was like back to back, one day, the next day, so different. And that's so helpful because you can be like, well, that's the same show and I'm the same person. And so you cannot derive the worth of yourself, your writing, your show, whatever it is, from these reactions all the time. You have to just be so certain that you know what you're trying to say, and that some people have loved it, and that's okay if they don't get it, kind of thing. But also that you can't even read that, because you'll get feedback from that one that you thought was a shocker, and they're like, no, they want the show again, and you're like, what? Sure, fine, I'll go again. You know, that kind of thing.
So you're describing how valuable theatre is in life, how much validation it can give you, even when it's negative, even when things aren't working, it can give you so much positive. Yeah,
and arguably more. Like, you'll never remember a show more than when you've lost your unit and you haven't said the thing that really informs this later one. And it's fine, because you're going to have to start peppering that message in, like those kind of things. You'll remember so much more from the things that went wrong than you do from all of the shows that went right. You'll go, oh, and there's so much value in that, because you've then got to earn your money. You're like, right, okay, they do need to know that bit, so I'm going to have to put that in somewhere. That's fine. And I do have the luxury of that. I'm not doing someone else's piece, and like that's so precious about that, and they want it a certain way. I mean, I have the luxury of that, which is good, because I don't think I've ever done the same show twice. I've said different things, or someone said something or really agreed with one part and I've just gone on that tangent, or I've forgotten a piece and I'm like, yeah, you definitely didn't do that, but that's not important. You can drop that one, let's move on, kind of thing. But it's in those moments, and I wish I could tell like a younger version of myself that's the real value, is the stuff that went wrong.
So if you could go back, let's imagine we could go back to that younger version of yourself, starting out at the first blog.
Oh yeah.
What do you say to yourself there to drive yourself forward?
What would I say to Susie then? I'd say cut a fringe. I'm definitely better with a fringe. I didn't have one then. I felt like it was high maintenance at that time. It definitely is more flattering. I don't even have the fringe out today, but just have a look on the Instagram. It's better with a fringe. What would I say to her? I'd say that it's about to get really good, and there's a version of your life that is so different and so out of the realms of your imagination. Just hang in there, and you're going to want to give up in lots of elements of your life, and you're going to feel like you're not good enough, but just keep doing the next step. Just keep doing the next one, and surround yourself with good people who are willing to tell you no, and that's not a good idea. Those are the most valuable voices that you can hear, because I've been around people that have, and worked with people in amongst this project, that have just been very yes people, and there isn't much value to that kind of thing. So yeah, I would just say, just wait, buckle up, it's about to get really good.
Were there moments then that were really hard that you thought, this isn't going to come together, this isn't going to work for me, or I'm even wasting my time maybe? Yeah, like I'd applied for funding, didn't get funding. Applied funding again, didn't get funding again, which is wild to me. Not that I didn't get it, but like it's the process of getting funding is wild to me. No work is ever seen. It's just how well you can write an application. That felt really like a knock to me. It felt like a knock when I had this whole tour planned. I just got Jen on board, who's the producer. And then there's a pandemic and you can't fucking go. And you're like, okay, well, maybe you're not supposed to go. Maybe that's going to happen. And then there was a time when I really wanted to get it to Edinburgh, and I had this like plan in mind. I want to get it to Edinburgh. And then that didn't happen. Logistically, that's really hard for a single parent to manage her life and fund it and bring them for part of it and all of that stuff. And I wanted that to happen, and that didn't happen. And that felt like, oh, shit, like, how am I going to do this? And then took a really lovely person, a friend of mine, to say, you already have a tour, what are you going to Edinburgh for? Like, that's just for you, that's just for fun, and that's great and everything, but you have a tour, that's what most people are looking for, just, and like, you know, knowing, I think what I've learnt from those things going wrong is, like, you can have a version of what you think this is going to look like, but don't hold on to it too tightly, because it will look different, and there's been some wonderful things that have happened because those things didn't happen. Which I feel really, really grateful for. And the tour ended up in the right places and seeing the right people, and it's just been, yeah, a bit of a thing in my life that I could never have planned for. So, yeah. So as you're deciding to bring this to a close, you're going to do one final show here at the Playhouse. Yeah. What was the decision behind that, saying, I've done this show now, and that's it for you? Where does that come from?
It was a really difficult one because this show has been such an integral and significant part of like my healing, and letting go of something that was such a part of you has been really difficult to do. But I do think it's really important to know when to let go. And it's a chapter in my life which I need to finish. I need to finish it. And it was such a big part of my identity for a while. And I think I pinned a lot of my, creatively, I thought, well, maybe this is all I can do. Maybe like the story wrote itself, like the content was there kind of thing. So you sort of cling to that. There's a bit of insecurity there as well. But also knowing that like, there's parts of this show that I say and that I'm saying that speak to that chapter in my life, that I am no longer her anymore. And that feels like a good time to end. I'm ready to like write this new one, knowing that I did it and that that's not me anymore. And that whilst it was lovely and served me so well, and I'll always have such a soft spot for it and be so grateful for it, that you have to know when to say goodbye. And I wasn't ever really good at goodbyes. I hated the ending.
Takes a lot, what's coming up a lot here, vulnerability and bravery.
Yeah.
Like that's really brave to close a chapter in your life, to say I'm done on that now.
Yeah.
It can feel quite painful, I guess,
So painful.
You know, and I'm guessing that there's probably going to be some emotion there come the end as you kind of put this to bed and go, I'm done.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I look at the version of myself that was sat there writing it, and I look at the version of myself now, and I think, oh, it's so, there's such a difference between those two people, and that's lovely. But I do think you should end on a high, and you should end feeling fondly about something. And there is a knowing in you, and I do think there is a knowing, and I've ignored that knowing in many areas of my life before, of just like, oh no, it's okay, and that's never ended well for me. And I never want to get to a point where this show has become a burden, has become work. It doesn't feel like work. Some of the journeys have felt like work, I'm not going to lie, I've travelled fucking far. But the actual doing of it doesn't feel like work, and I won't I think too much of it for that. And nobody else might have that opinion of that show, and that's fine, but I do, and I value it too much to kill it, if you know what I mean. I'd rather put it to bed.
So how does that drive us forward then? How does that, if we close this chapter now and you're going somewhere else next, how do we know where we're going next and what we take from this? Do we? Do we have any idea?
Yeah.
Can we pretend that we do? Or?
Well, I know that I'm partway through writing another one, and I know I want to do that. And really that's just to prove to myself that I can, again, same sort of thing, that I can do that. I also think it's really important that these stories are told. I think the reason why my show gets booked in, I don't have a huge social media following. I'm not like, which is a lot of the reasons why people get booked in for things. Yeah. And they sell a lot of tickets and all of that stuff. I understand that, and there is value in that, and I understand that. I'm not bitter about that in the slightest. I think it's a really lovely way for like working class people to make theatre, which was quite elite before and only the privileged could do. And I love that people are like voting with their feet, and like people who are liked are getting to do theatre. Love that. But I know the reason why my show is booked is because I'm talking about motherhood. I'm talking about that, and there aren't loads of shows that are doing that. And in quite like a funny but also like authentic way. It's not just that, oh, this is like an entertainment show to kind of make you laugh. I'm hoping that some people will come away and, you know, take something from it. So I'm very aware of that, and that feels like a really good purpose for me, to be able to like shed light on those things. But also my life has moved on significantly, and they're not babies and toddlers anymore, and they're pre-teens and teens, and that brings all sorts of challenges and comedy as well. And making people feel less alone in that feels like the right thing to do. So yeah, I think that's where it's leading me now. But again, I'm open to...
So is there a dream? Do you have a vision of the future that you would like to get to?
I used to have that. I used to think I'd love to make a living off of this. I mean, that feels like everyone's dream, doesn't it?
Well, especially when they're doing these creative projects, we see the big thing, don't we? Yeah. It's got to be on the West End, or we've got to go to Hollywood, or we've got to get our picture in the tape. Whatever it is, it's like we've got to go to the extreme.
Sure.
But does the dream have to be the extreme?
I think I would have thought that I would have loved certain things. I had lots of little dreams. If you'd spoken to me maybe 2 years ago, I would have told you what those were. But what I'm realising is, and if you've read anybody's autobiography, is that it can be really lonely once you achieve every single one of those dreams, or just one of them, and you get to the top of this mountain that you've given yourself, and you think that your happiness and your contentment is there in these achievements. And I have come to realise that that's never the case and will never be the case. And whilst it's a balance, isn't it? It's important to have those, you know, a purpose and a goal. I think that's important. I don't know that I'll ever pinpoint something. I know that there'd be things I'd like to do. I'd love to go to Soho Theatre and do something there. That would be a really nice one. But equally, I don't expect to arrive there and have all my dreams come true and suddenly I'm really happy and everything in life is fine and all of those things. So as I've come to that realisation over the last few years and understood that actually, you know, the goal is to be here now and enjoying your days. It's how you're spending your days that is the most important thing. I think my goal is just to be carrying on enjoying it. Enjoy each part, the part where you've created something. I had a really good writing day like last week and I came away buzzing and I was like, yeah, this is it. I know that this feeling is here now and it's not there at the top of the mountain. It is this part now. I know that implicitly. Because there's a part of me that would have been like, oh, I just want to get it on tour. And when I get it on tour, it'll be this kind of thing. And whilst it's had extreme value and been lovely and so wholesome, it hasn't fixed everything in my life and I'm suddenly this, I don't suddenly feel more worthy of stuff or happy kind of thing. So I tend not to do that anymore, and it's not like a conscious thing. It's not like I'm going, right, don't, because I will get caught up in the messaging like everybody else. But, and then I'll just go, oh yeah, no, it's not there. It's not there. And everyone has their version of that, whether it's the bigger house or the next holiday or the next creative project is going to take me here and then I'm going to be on this stage and I'm going to be doing that. Of course, it'd be lovely if I made a living from doing this. That'd be great. But I'm not silly. I know that it doesn't happen to everybody. In fact, it happens to hardly anybody. And if it does happen, I'm not going to suddenly find myself landed in happiness kind of thing. So yeah, just to keep enjoying it, I think.
What I'm hearing from you is the joy is in the journey, not the destination, essentially, isn't it? It's in the now.
Yeah,
it's in the doing of it that you find the joy.
Absolutely.
And through you doing it, through you doing this blog and then turning that into a play and then putting that on tour, in each of those moments was the joy.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. And I think kids are a really good way for you to see that. Like, you'll blink and they're 5 years older and you like realise you're not doing
like I mentioned, my
anymore.
son is like 19 and I'm like, where did that go?
Where did it all go?
How did that happen? And
I'm also so aware of that. That's like such an incredible reminder that you're like, go off and do this tour and then you're like, or do this show and you'll come back and they've done something else and they're a really good way to like keep you grounded and in the present moment. I know they are where, that's like a huge part of my purpose and will keep me like in the moment because I know that they're just going to grow and they'll go and I'll have all the time in the world to and all the space and the opportunity in the world to do things. So it's really important for me to get that balance to know that, you know,
I guess our children can force us back into the present.
Oh, they do,
because
don't they?
This moment will be gone.
It will, yeah.
And you know it has already. You know there are moments that have gone. In fact, a memory came up on Facebook, you know, the Facebook memories of 2019, and I looked back at my son and my daughter as these two small little creatures, tiny little people that had all these hopes and dreams about going on this holiday that was about to go, and I was like, we did the holiday,
and we did it. It was great,
and we did this bit and we did that bit, and like, but that's all gone.
All gone now.
And I kind of wish sometimes I could go back to myself and talk to myself as a parent and say, enjoy that moment.
Oh, I do all the time.
Enjoy that so much. Like, just sit there for a minute. Yeah. Stop worrying about like what's next,
that bill or that.
Yeah, or what's going wrong, or the stressing. Just like be.
100%, but that is I think that's everybody's life work to be present. But also we're just like human beings that are not like we're not going to be susceptible to this messaging that like is a great way to run an economy, to keep people thinking that their happiness is just there. It's just when you meet this career goal, it's just when your body looks this way, it's just when you get this holiday, it's just there. And I obviously find myself doing it like, well, if I just, and then I go, oh, hang on, you know better. You do know better because you have achieved the things and you've failed and you've done all of these things, and yet you are still this person that is worthy of all of the good things in life, kind of thing. And I think as creatives, we can sort of, or as creative people, you can get wrapped up in thinking it's in this project, it's in this thing, and or the result of this project. It's not. It's in the moment where you like have achieved what maybe you thought that you couldn't, or that maybe someone came out of your thing and had a really lovely time. That is it. That's the goal. And as soon as you lose sight of that, you start, I think, writing shit. Because you're trying to, like, preempt people's reactions and are they going to find that funny? And again, I've been caught up in that. But, yeah, just enjoy the now, because you don't know what. And also, what if you get there and it's really shit? And
it wasn't what you thought it would be. It wasn't what your imagination put together.
And I've been absolutely putting myself to the grind. Like, absolutely, like, missing out on all this stuff at home and like sacrificing everything and time with friends and all that stuff, and then I get there and it's just the loneliest place. I'm just not willing to make that sacrifice for those things. That's why all the footballers cheat. That's my theory.
Okay.
Yeah, these footballers, they're a dream and they get it really young.
Right.
And they get everything they could ever possibly want.
And then it isn't what
it's never what it is, and
wasn't
it's always the feeling of, like I always think of a holiday, like it's the feeling before the holiday is actually always better than the holiday. It's the anticipation feeling. And so then they get this happy family and these kids and everything's happening, and then what? And then they're what?
And they've invested so much into it, all this money, and they're having to take away from something else. So.
Sure, and then they reach 30 and they've aged out of what they were so good at, like an extreme level. And then there's this person that offers them some validation and they're like, yeah, I could do with that, I really missed that.
Yeah. It's something that we do need to consider with all of this, that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Because again, I'm talking to so many different creatives and I'm hearing this a lot from creatives that they have to sacrifice something.
Sure.
So it's kind of choosing, what do you sacrifice and is there value in that sacrifice?
Yeah.
So the value for you has been, it's given you something in your life other than being a mother.
Yeah.
That it's given you your own purpose.
Yeah.
So that sacrifice alone was worth it.
Yeah, and it's cyclical because that feeds into who I am as a mother. And then I'm a better mother because of that. And then I do more of that. And then I'm better with them and I'm better with myself and I've got no idea, that kind of thing. So I do think it's all part of it kind of thing.
Well, this has been a wonderful conversation.
Thanks.
I really appreciate you sharing this journey. I really do look forward to, I'm going to come and watch your show.
Oh, lovely.
Because I've been around and I haven't seen it yet.
That'd be great.
So I'll be coming to see it. I look forward to it. But as we wrap this up, we've kind of touched on it already with the advice for parents to kind of start a blog. But what advice would you give to other parents kind of seeking to do just something for themselves?
I'd say try everything. Try and push yourself to do things, even if it's just an inkling of something you thought, oh, I might like joining in with that. Just try, and you can quit. I think quitting's got a bit of a bad rap over the years, but it's such an important part of it. Keep trying new things, different things. And as a performer, I've tried many different things, and some of them have worked, and some of them haven't, and they all have value though. So I'd just say push yourself and try everything.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Susie.
Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. And if anyone was watching or listening, thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks.
Thanks again, Susie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. That was lovely.
Wow.